I had to get out of there. I felt the coronavirus was all around me. Who wasn't wearing a mask? Who weren't wearing gloves? Some lady was standing 5.5 feet away from me. I don't know what to do anymore. Who do I listen to? Do I listen to the experts on TV or the experts on Facebook? What happened to Dr. Fauci? How come he's done the news conference anymore? What did they do to Dr. Fauci? Oh my God! Did a spaceship land in a rose garden and take him away to a different planet? Oh my God! I gotta calm down. I gotta calm down. Oh my God! What if the virus is not here?
In historic Frederick, Maryland, are the biological warfare laboratories. Here, men and women of science are doing basically the same type of work as in other government, university, and industrial laboratories. A combination of medical and public health research. While I was at Fort Detrick, I was able to follow partway through an experiment to determine the effectiveness of an agent. Volunteers are important to the testing picture. For many years, information has been needed on the effect of a biological warfare attack on man, so that we can have a better understanding of how to defend ourselves against it. It was possible to expose a person in each cubicle to a measured volume of biological aerosol from the spear. I said before I was able to follow part way through the experiment, the final part. As was expected, the volunteers were temporarily incapacitated, but within a short time they were up and around, completely recovered. They had the satisfaction of having played an important part in obtaining information which would immediately be given to the Public Health Service to bolster our defenses against disease.
There is a book called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, and it describes that right after the Spanish flu pandemic, which, by the way, resulted in 50 million deaths.
Right.
Okay, so that is way, 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 way more than our current situation. But the U.S. Public Health Service, they did a series of 3 experiments with people. They did some additional animal experiments as well. But the experiments with the humans, they had 100 healthy subjects, and then they had several people who were sick with the flu. So what they did is they had the people who were sick with the flu cough up as much nasty stuff as they could. They put swabs in their nose to collect the snot. They even swabbed their eyeballs. So they were trying to collect all of the particles that they thought were infectious that they could then deliver to a healthy person and make them sick. So in the first experiment, what they did is they squirted these secretions into the nose, eyes, and throat of the healthy people. And out of those 100 healthy people, not one of them became ill with the flu. So they thought, well, we need to try harder, and they devised a second experiment. In the second experiment, they took the same secretions from the sick person who was coughing and sneezing and tearing, and they then injected that into the healthy subjects. And once again, none of the subjects became ill with the flu. So they devised a third experiment, thinking that perhaps a more natural, casual human contact is required for transmission of the disease. And so what they did is they had the person who was sick with the flu sit really close, like uncomfortably close, to the healthy subject. And they had a conversation for like 5 or 10 minutes, I forget the exact time. And then after that, they had the sick individual take a deep breath in, and the healthy individual take a deep breath out, and they put their lips together almost as if they were kissing, but no contact. And the sick person blew all of his breath into the healthy person, who inhaled it all. And the results of that experiment once again showed that none of the healthy subjects became ill. So I've tried very hard to find additional experiments where they tested this theory about contagion of infectious agents. And I could not find any conclusive studies that proved contagion exists.
I mean, and we're taking things that are, genetically modified organisms, and we're injecting them in little kids' arms. We just shoot them right into the vein.
I'd like to call to order this secret conclave of America's media empires. We're here to come up with the next phony baloney crisis to put Americans back where they belong, in dark rooms glued to their televisions, too terrified to skip the commercials.
Well, I think...
NBC, you are here to listen and not speak. I think we should go with a good old-fashioned public health scare.
A new disease. No one's immune. It's like the summer of the shark, except instead of a shark, it's an epidemic. And instead of summer, it's all the time.
That is... Now, I hate to be the guy who derails what everybody else loves.
He loves being that guy.
But, Janice, we do have standards. This can't be a made-up disease.
We do have something we've been holding on to, but it hasn't been tested. Get over here, NBC.
Well, we certainly believe in testing, but Wow. Oh, yeah.
So, we've got our deadly disease. Now, we just have to blame it on something that's in every household, something that people are a little bit afraid of already. House cat flu is coming, people. The Center for Disease Disinformation predicts with some degree of probability that the house cat flu might spread in the following hypothetical outbreak pattern.
Now, Green Spring is a 58-acre campus, so I'm sure a lot of you are worried about this outbreak. If you know someone there, I have 3 important notes for you from the Fairfax County Health Department. First of all, 18 people were taken to the hospital. The doctor I spoke with told me that 2 of them died, and those people had pneumonia. But doctors can't pin their deaths on that infection because they had some complicated medical histories. Second, the respiratory infection is completely contained to just the assisted living facility that houses 263 people. It has not spread to any of the other buildings on the campus. Finally for you, Green Spring has taken steps that the health department recommended to stop the spread, including keeping those who are sick in their rooms, closing the doors to new patients, and canceling any activities.
They have reported several outbreaks during the past decade, and that includes very common things like norovirus, which is a cause of diarrhea, and they also have had 1 influenza outbreak. But certainly, we have seen nothing in this facility that is out of the normal for a facility of this size.
Dr. Schwartz says a lab at the State Health Department and one at Inova Health System are testing samples to see if they can figure out exactly what caused those 54 people to get sick. And one more note on this. The health department says the infection ranges in severity from just a cough all the way to pneumonia.
February 1956. In the heart of New York, Operation Big City was underway. A Ford Mercury, specially adapted with a hidden exhaust pipe, pumped out bacteria onto the streets of Manhattan. Undercover agents entered the city's subway system, their cases equipped with tiny motors, which covertly dispersed the bacteria Bacillus globuli. 10 years later, the Army returned. Light bulbs filled with bacteria were dropped in front of trains and down ventilation shafts to test how far the bacteria would spread through the subway system. For years, these public experiments were kept secret from the citizens of New York. The Army faithfully filmed its own experiments. This Washington, D.C. bus station was the site of another secret test. 30 similar trials were conducted at public locations all across America. One of the earliest experiments had fatal consequences. In 1951, the Army sprayed the bacteria Serratia marcescens over San Francisco. 11 hospital patients developed a mysterious infection, and within days, Edward Nevin died from an illness caused by the same bacteria. In 1953, CIA employee Frank Olson leaped through his bedroom window on the 10th floor of this New York hotel. 9 days earlier, a fellow CIA scientist had secretly spiked his drink with LSD. It took the government 22 years to acknowledge its role in Frank Olson's death.
News this morning on a story that we have been following. A professor at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland has been arrested over his alleged financial ties to China. This just days after the FBI sounded the alarm on China's attempts to steal coronavirus research. A professor at the University of Arkansas was arrested on similar charges last week. And then in January, Harvard's chemistry chief was charged with failing to disclose that he, too, was being paid by the Chinese Communist Party. 2 weeks ago, Senator Tom Cotton told us that the CCP was trying in many ways to steal medical data from the United States to try and come up with a vaccine for COVID-19 before the United States. My sit-down with President Trump included this. We discussed IP theft and the pandemic's impact on his relationship with China and President Xi Jinping. Secretary Pompeo said that he has strong evidence that it did come from the virology lab. We've been reporting this every Sunday, by the way, from early on. You also said that you saw evidence. Can you tell us anything about the intelligence?
No, but we have a lot of information. And it's not good. But you know the worst of all, whether it came from the lab or came from the bats or it all came from China, and they should have stopped it. They could have stopped it at that source. I call it the source. Right there.
They made a decision to allow it to escape its borders.
I don't know if they made the decision, but it got out of control. I think more likely it got out of control.
Senator Cotton said that they didn't want the Chinese economy to contract 20% and the rest of the world to contract 2%.
So we were beating them very badly before this. We were beating them between the tariffs and other things we were doing. And we were going up, and they were having a very bad year. They were having the worst year they've had in 56 years.
He had Hong Kong protesters on the street,
and they weren't well, and even beyond that. And we were really doing well. And that is a theory. But here's what I know for sure. They didn't allow this whole thing. They didn't allow people to go into China, but they did allow them to go out to the world, including the United States. That's why Europe is a mess. That's why, look at these countries. Russia's having a hard time. Everybody's having a hard time.
So will it get worse for those countries, do you think?
Yeah, it's for some of them. Some have just started the process. We're getting toward the end of the process.
Oh my God! I touched the steering wheel! What if the virus is on the steering wheel now? I just spit on the dashboard! What if the virus is on the dashboard on the steering wheel? Oh my God! I gotta calm down. I gotta calm down. I'll listen to some music. Oh my God! I just touched the knob. What if the virus is on the knob? Oh my God! Calm down, Vic. Calm down. Calm down. Easy. Easy. We'll get through this. Yeah. That's it. We'll get through it.
If you ask anybody who takes 5,000 units of vitamin D a day, they'll tell you they just don't get sick anymore. Your colds and flu just don't happen. How that works is kind of neat. Your body makes hundreds of naturally occurring antibiotics called antimicrobial peptides, and people have been looking for a long time to see what upregulates genetic production of them. That is, what increases production of antimicrobial peptides. And just in the last couple of years, Professor John White at McGill University discovered, and others, that vitamin D really upregulates production of antimicrobial peptides. And people now, of course, it makes sense. Do you get many colds and flu in the summertime? No, not really. And people have always thought that the reason for that is people are crowding in the wintertime. But it turns out it's probably simply due to the fact that your vitamin D levels in the winter are sometimes 1/3 what they are in the summertime. You know, a lot of times when even scientists talk about science, they confuse facts and theories.
Antimicrobial peptides, what are they effective against? Are they broad spectrum?
Well, there's several hundred, maybe perhaps as many as 1,000 in the human body, probably even more than that, because they seem to specialize in different things. But the catholicedins, one of the major groups, have an incredibly broad spectrum of action. In both bacteria and viruses, in encapsulated viruses, there are many viruses with a lipoprotein coat around them. It simply destroys the coat or punches a hole in the coat, and the virus or the bacteria die. The same with a number of fungal infections. Pretty much any disease, any infectious disease that's more common in the wintertime is a target of vitamin D. Even some of the more prolonged infections, such as tuberculosis. I mean, in fact, it was common knowledge that sunshine helped tuberculosis 100 years ago. Every doctor knew that to be a fact. The AMA knew it to be a fact. They published it. They said it was a fact. But people just forget about it. And it turns out that the reason sunlight helped tuberculosis is because of the vitamin D in it. The same may be true of longer term infectious disease. Nobody knows what the death rate from HIV infection is, or hepatitis C, except in a vitamin D deficient population. The effect vitamin D has in preventing influenza and the common cold should not be overestimated, especially with pandemic influenza. How likely a virus is to kill you depends upon not only your innate immunity, that is, how many antimicrobial peptides you have waiting to kill the influenza virus, but it also depends on how many antibodies you have, what's called the adaptive immune system. And it also depends upon how novel the virus is to the human species and how lethal it is. In 1918, there were documented cases of people being well in the morning, coughing at noon, blue at supper time, and dead by nighttime. It was that quick. And even though the majority of deaths occurred in the wintertime, for example, in the United States in the 1918 pandemic, there were outbreaks in the summertime. So I would caution people to think that vitamin D is the cure for influenza, although I think it's going to be proven to be a major weapon in the fight against influenza and even the common cold.
Based on what's going on in China, where they're carrying government-issued ID cards, and we read that there are some 200 million cameras set up with facial recognition, and all this data is getting knit together to the extent that citizens are scored by what they are allowed to do. How close are we to that here, given all of this surveillance you just mentioned?
When I saw the color-coded thing, I thought, oh, well, you know, under the Obama administration, the Department of Homeland Security actually announced they were doing threat assessments on American homes across the country. They went from green to red. When I saw the Chinese were doing it, I would go, did we get it from the Chinese? Or, or whatever, the Chinese get it from us. But the Department of Homeland Security has been doing that since the Obama administration. And now the Trump administration has hired the Palantir Corporation, who has contracts at NSA, CIA, and whatever, to develop a contact tracing app, which will lead to an immunity passport card, basically, on your phone. So you will not be able to enter buildings or whatever in the future if this goes forward, and they already have the funding to do it. So it's already here. So the color-coded system is already here that we're seeing in China, and it's very, very dangerous, by the way, because you have people from a distance, a government agent, looking at you and saying, uh-oh, they didn't do this or didn't do that, so they're a yellow or they're a red.
Yeah.
But here's the dangerous thing about all this. 80,000 SWAT team raids are occurring annually in America, and police have that information, and some of it can be incorrect. So when they have that information, they see you're a red, You know, there was the case of Duncan Lemp in Maryland, who got shot in his bed 3 or 4 weeks ago because the police said he was the Second Amendment advocate and all that. He was shot through the window in his bed with his girlfriend, and his parents were threatened with a $1,000 fine, a $5,000 fine, and a year in jail if they went to the courthouse and protested. So we're already seeing some of this stuff. The problem is, it's good programs like, if you go to CNN and programs like that, you don't hear anything about that.
Yeah, you know, this color coding is something Michael Moore warned us about years ago after 9/11. It's a way for Big Brother to yank your chain because they can keep changing the color. And I think that that has us at least mentally hunkered down, doesn't it?
Yeah, it makes you, you know, people feel like, you know, they're being watched and all that. But, you know, one thing the American government's done very well is, and very sneaky, is they haven't mentioned much of this. This stuff is just, again, you don't hear the mainstream media talking about any of this. It comes out in books like mine, articles by other people out there who are writing by this. And what I'm trying to get people to do is watch good programs on television, informative programs. Quit watching all the BS you see on a lot of this stuff and get educated. Start reading some good articles, good books. And the key to the future of this country, I'll be honest with you, local governments. People are going to have to take over their local governments and stop some of this crazy stuff that we're seeing and push back against it. Otherwise, we're all going to be doing trial, whatever the next leader is coming down the block. And if you resist, the people who resist, by the way, and stand on their First Amendment freedoms, the Fourth Amendment freedom, are going to be labeled Reds, color-coded Reds, and no telling what's going to happen to them. I'm afraid people are going to stand by and watch it in many situations.
Well, under the present circumstances with this pandemic, the rationale for surveillance is a term that we're going to be hearing a lot lately, contact tracing, meaning they're going to figure out who tests positive and find out everybody they've been with who may have infected them or whom they may have infected. And we're going to show a quick video clip here that demonstrates how your phone does that.
Using tectonics, we can then zoom in on specific regions. Here, we focus specifically on just one beach in Fort Lauderdale during the month of March. Again, each of these data points shown on the map corresponds to a unique mobile device active on a given day. You can see clearly that device activity spikes during the 2-week stretch of early to mid-March corresponding to spring break. No surprise. Now, using an analysis called a spider query, we can actually track movement of these devices over the remaining weeks of March, seeing where these devices went after spring breakers left the beach. As we zoom further and further out, it becomes clear just how massive the potential impact just one single beach gathering can have in spreading this virus across our nation. It can be hard for us to realize sometimes just how connected our world really is, until the data tells the stories that we just can't see.
That is pretty impressive technology, and we volunteered for it. The phone is right in our pocket. John, after 9/11, Congress gave us the very patriotic-sounding Patriot Act, which really whacked a lot of our freedoms. But we are assured that Big Brother isn't actually listening into our phone calls, that they're just tracing metadata from millions and millions of phone calls, looking for patterns. Do you buy that? And does this pandemic make it an even slipperier slope?
No, it's a lie. The NSA downloads at least 4 billion phone calls, you know, annually, and emails. They're watching everything, your Facebook account. And it's fed into local police, by the way, who have that as well, who work with the FBI and across the country. So no, they're watching everything you're doing. You and I both, Holland, they know everything we're doing. I mean, your Ring doorbells watch you. We have facial recognition software. Everything you're doing is being watched. Your television listens to what you're doing. So we live in a total surveillance society. That's why I said, if you want to look at where we're at, read Orwell's 1984, because it's all here already, folks. And here's the key. Great philosophers of the past that I've read said people don't realize what's happening to them until it's there, the environment. And the reason what that is because we're not really studying and doing what we need to be doing, and then no one taking action against it. And the only way Washington, D.C. is not going to listen to you, but your local governments can, and you can go out and kick butt that way. Demonstrate, but get on city councils and nullify some of these things and quit some of these crazy SWAT team raids where kids are getting killed and old ladies are getting shot over stuff when they're in the wrong house sometimes. So let's adhere to our Constitution and be good people, we the people.
Yeah, it's quite an irony. We feel safe because we have the Ring doorbell, but we are volunteering all that data. John, I'm down to a minute, but you mentioned the FBI, and I got to ask because I got chills when I read what you wrote about NGID, the FBI's next generation identification database. I need the quick version, but what's that all about?
It is a huge facial recognition database. Most people don't realize DMV gives your photographs over to the FBI. They have all that information. So when a crime is committed anywhere, your face pops up. And what it means is we live in a suspect society. They're watching everybody. And again, that can get you in trouble with the wrong type of local SWAT team raid or something like that. But they're watching your face. You're a suspect now, folks. They have your face. They're watching you. You're in a lineup.